You are holding more computing power in your hand right now than NASA used to land a man on the moon. You already knew that. But here is something you probably did not know. The camera lens staring back at you from that same device exists because a Soviet metal ball beeped over America's head in 1957 and made an entire nation panic. That ball was Sputnik. It weighed 184 pounds. It did nothing except orbit the Earth and transmit a radio signal. But that beep changed everything. Because when the Soviet Union launched the first artificial satellite into space, the United States realized something terrifying. They were behind. And being behind in the Cold War was not an option. So America did what America does when it is scared. It threw money at the problem. President Eisenhower signed the National Aeronautics and Space Act in 1958 and created NASA. Congress poured billions into research. Universities scrambled. Defense contractors worked around the clock. The space race had begun, and it would end up giving you the camera in your phone. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Let us back up. The early cameras sent into space were heavy. They used film. That meant you had to physically bring the film back to Earth to see the images. For spy satellites, that was manageable. A capsule would detach, re-enter the atmosphere, and get caught midair by a specially equipped airplane. But for missions going deeper into space, for probes heading to the Moon, to Mars, to Jupiter, there was no one there to catch the film. You needed a way to capture an image and send it back as a signal. That was the problem NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL, was trying to solve in the 1960s. Engineers at JPL in Pasadena, California needed a camera sensor that could convert light directly into an electrical signal. No film, no moving parts, just light in, data out. They were not the only ones working on this. In 1969, two physicists at Bell Labs in New Jersey were tinkering with semiconductor technology. Their names were Willard Boyle and George Smith. Bell Labs was the research arm of AT&T at the time, one of the most powerful companies in America. And Boyle and Smith were given 1 week to come up with a new kind of semiconductor memory device. They did not invent memory, they invented something better. What Boyle and Smith sketched out on a blackboard in their lab was the charge-coupled device, or CCD. In the simplest terms, a CCD is a chip made of silicon that converts photons, which are particles of light, into electrical charges. Each tiny spot on the chip captures light and turns it into a number. Put all those numbers together and you get a digital image. It was elegant, it was revolutionary, and almost nobody outside of Bell Labs understood what they had. But NASA understood. Engineers at JPL, led by researcher Eric Fossum in later years, and building on the original Boyle and Smith design, saw the CCD as the solution to their problem. If you could build a CCD small enough and sensitive enough, you could attach it to a space probe, capture images of distant planets, and transmit those images back to Earth as radio signals. No film canister, no re-entry capsule, just data traveling at the speed of light. NASA funded the development heavily. Throughout the 1970s, CCDs were refined, tested, and miniaturized. The first major test came with the Voyager missions. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 launched in 1977, each carrying imaging systems built around CCD sensors. These twin probes were heading to Jupiter and Saturn, and they needed cameras that were light enough not to waste fuel, tough enough to survive radiation, and sensitive enough to capture images of worlds no human eye had ever seen. The Voyager imaging system, designed by a team at JPL under scientist Bradford Smith, performed beyond anyone's expectations. The photos of Jupiter's great red spot, the rings of Saturn, the moons of these distant worlds, they were stunning. And they were all captured by CCD sensors descended from that blackboard sketch at Bell Labs. The space race had proven that CCD technology worked, but the story does not end with space probes. Because here is the thing about technology funded by governments during existential competitions. Once the research is done, it does not stay in the lab, it leaks out, it gets cheaper, it gets smaller, and someone somewhere starts thinking about what else you could do with it. Through the 1980s, CCD sensors began appearing in video cameras. Sony, JVC, and other Japanese electronics companies licensed the technology and started building consumer products. The first professional CCD video cameras were bulky and expensive, but the trajectory was clear. Every year the sensors got smaller. Every year the resolution got better. Every year the price dropped. By the early 1990s, digital still cameras started appearing. Apple launched the QuickTake in 1994. Kodak, Casio, and Canon followed. These early digital cameras were clunky. They stored maybe 30 or 40 images. The resolution was low, but they used CCD sensors that could trace their lineage directly back to the funding NASA poured into space imaging. Now let us jump to 1997. A software entrepreneur named Philippe Kahn was at a hospital in Santa Clara, California. His wife was in labor, and Kahn had a problem. He wanted to take a picture of his newborn daughter and send it to family and friends immediately, not later, now. Kahn was not a camera engineer. He was the founder of Borland International, a software company, but he was a tinkerer, and he happened to have a digital camera, a Motorola phone, and a laptop with him. So in that hospital room with his newborn daughter barely minutes old, Kahn jury-rigged a system. He connected the camera to the phone through the laptop, wrote some quick code on the spot, and transmitted a photograph. It is widely considered the first photo ever sent from a phone. Kahn later said the whole thing was improvised. It was messy, it was not elegant, but it worked. And that moment in a hospital room pointed the entire consumer electronics industry in a direction it had not yet seriously considered. If you could connect a camera to a phone, why not build the camera into the phone? The race was on. Japanese carrier J-Phone, now SoftBank, launched the Kyocera VP210 in 1999, one of the first commercial camera phones. It had a 0.11 megapixel camera, that is barely enough pixels to see a face. But it was a camera inside a phone, and people went crazy for it. By 2003, camera phones outsold standalone digital cameras for the first time. By 2006, over 500 million camera phones were sold worldwide in a single year. The technology that started on a blackboard in Bell Labs, that was perfected for Voyager at JPL, that was miniaturized by Sony and Canon, that was cobbled together by Philippe Kahn in a hospital room, had become the most popular camera on Earth. Willard Boyle and George Smith won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2009 for their invention of the CCD. By then, their technology was inside billions of phones, but even the CCD itself was being overtaken. A newer sensor technology called CMOS, which stands for complementary metal oxide semiconductor, was cheaper to manufacture and used less power. CMOS sensors took over the camera phone market. But CMOS was developed using the same fundamental principle that Boyle and Smith proved. Light hits silicon. Silicon converts it to data. The entire lineage runs back to one moment of geopolitical panic. Think about that the next time you open your camera app. The reason you can photograph your food, your friends, your life, and send it anywhere in the world in seconds is because a Soviet satellite beeped over Washington in 1957, and America decided it would rather spend billions than be second. Every selfie you have ever taken is a descendant of the space race. You carry the legacy of the Cold War in your pocket every single day, and you probably never even thought about it until now.